The rain fell in sheets against the tall glass windows of the downtown Café Tilde Copyright, turning the city streets outside into glistening rivers of light. Inside, the chatter of hurried patrons barely penetrated the suffocating bubble of loneliness that seemed to envelop Emily Carter as she waited for her blind date. At 28, she had learned to navigate the world in her wheelchair, but not the world of dating. The last time she had allowed herself to hope for romance, she had been met with stares, awkward silences, and pitying glances that cut deeper than any cruel word could. Tonight, however, she had clung to a fragile thread of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, someone would see her for who she was, not the chair she sat in. Emily had dressed carefully, her auburn hair pinned neatly, her makeup subtle yet polished. She had chosen a soft blue dress that complemented her eyes, something that made her feel alive and confident. But as soon as her date arrived, a man named Luke Cossa, tall, sharply dressed accountant with a smile that had seemed kind in his texts, her hopes began to crumble. He glanced at her wheelchair, his eyes flickering with a mix of shock and discomfort that immediately made Emily's stomach knot. He barely made small talk, his words clipped, his laughter forced. Halfway through their drinks, he excused himself under the pretense of a phone call, and within minutes, he was gone, leaving her with a cold glass and a quiet, echoing humiliation. Emily stared at the empty seat across from her, trying to hold back tears that burned behind her eyes. She had known rejection before, but a broken bar. This was something else. It wasn't the absence of love, it was the presence of judgment, raw and unfiltered, and it stung more than she cared to admit. If the story had ended there, it would have been a story of heartbreak, of another girl who quietly learned to stop hoping. But life has a strange way of bending fate when you least expect it. Across the room, at a corner table near the window, sat a man quietly watching the world outside. James Harrison, a 35-year-old single father, had come to the Café Tilde Copyright to escape the chaos of his home, where his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was waiting with homework sprawled across their tiny kitchen table. James had been on his own since his wife's untimely passing 5 years ago, raising Lily with a mixture of tenderness and strict routines. He had become accustomed to the quiet evenings, the predictable routine, and the small, fleeting joys that parenting offered. But tonight, he noticed something unusual: a young woman alone, eyes shining with unshed tears, gripping the edge of her wheelchair as though it were both a lifeline and a cage. Something about her presence called to him, a quiet desperation that mirrored, in a way, the struggles he faced every day as a parent navigating a world that often failed to see the invisible weight people carried. Emily, meanwhile, had resolved to leave. She wheeled toward the door, each turn of the chair a reminder of how easily the world dismissed her. The rain had softened outside, leaving puddles that reflected the city's neon glow, but it did little to lift the heaviness in her chest. As she reached the entrance, she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. Turning, she met the eyes of James Harrison, who offered a warm, reassuring smile. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low, unassuming, but carrying an immediate sincerity. Emily's first instinct was to retreat, to guard herself from yet another intrusion. But something about the kindness in his eyes, the unassuming way he looked at her and not at her wheelchair, not at her apparent vulnerability, made her pause. Without thinking, Emily nodded, a small, cautious gesture. James gestured toward the empty chair at his table. "You don't have to go just yet. Sit here if you want. No one will bother you." It was a simple offer, but in that moment, it felt like a lifeline. She wheeled over, her heart fluttering with a strange mix of relief and apprehension. They didn't talk at first, simply sharing a silence that felt surprisingly comfortable, the kind that doesn't demand explanations or apologies. James ordered another coffee, and somehow, between sips of steaming liquid and the quiet buzz of Café Tilde Copyright life, the walls Emily had built around her heart began to crumble. James didn't ignore the wheelchair. He didn't shy away or treat her as fragile. Instead, he asked about her work, her hobbies, and her interests, genuinely listening with a patience that seemed almost foreign to Emily. She found herself laughing softly at his dry humor, a sound she hadn't realized she had been holding back for weeks. With every passing moment, the weight of rejection from earlier seemed less significant. replaced by a budding curiosity, a hope that perhaps the world wasn't entirely cruel. James spoke of his daughter, of how Lily loved to draw superheroes and imagined worlds where everyone was accepted exactly as they were. Emily shared stories of her own childhood, her love of writing, and the little victories she celebrated every day simply for surviving in a world that often failed to understand her. At one point, James noticed the faint tremble in Emily's hands as she held her coffee. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers with gentle assurance. "You're stronger than anyone realizes," he said softly. Emily's throat tightened. She had spent so much of her life fighting not to be defined by her paralysis, fighting to carve out a space where she could exist without apologies, and here was a stranger telling her, in the simplest way, that he saw her strength. No pity, no judgment, just acknowledgement. It was a small gesture, yet it ignited a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. The Café Tilde copyright began to empty as the evening wore on, but neither Emily nor James noticed. The world outside faded to background noise, replaced by a quiet connection that neither had expected but both desperately needed. Emily found herself speaking more openly, revealing fears and frustrations she had kept locked away for too long. James listened, responding with empathy and shared vulnerability, and for the first time in years, Emily felt a sense of belonging, of being seen in a way that transcended surface judgments. It was a strange, fragile kind of magic, the kind that makes you believe in second chances, in unexpected moments of grace. Hours passed, and the lights in the Café Tilde copyright dimmed. Emily realized she had not once felt the crushing anxiety that usually accompanied social encounters. She had not felt invisible. James, too, felt the stirring he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years, a sense of connection so rare, so genuine, that it left him breathless. He watched Emily carefully, not wanting to overstep, but unable to ignore the way his chest tightened whenever she laughed or tilted her head thoughtfully while describing a story from her childhood. It wasn't romance in the frantic, movie-like sense, it was something deeper, a quiet recognition of shared humanity, of the way two people could see each other and, in doing so, feel less alone in the world. Emily noticed a family at a nearby table struggling with a restless toddler, and James instinctively offered to help entertain the child while the parents gathered their things. Emily watched him move with practiced ease, juggling kindness and responsibility, and her heart swelled with an unfamiliar emotion. She realized that here was someone who didn't just talk about compassion, he lived it every day. And in that realization, Emily allowed herself a dangerous thought of perhaps she could imagine a future that included laughter, partnership, and understanding. A future she had never dared to envision. By the time they left the Café Tilde copyright together, the rain had ceased, leaving the streets slick and reflective, the city lights shimmering like stars scattered across the asphalt. Emily's heart felt lighter than it had in years, a buoyant mix of hope and cautious optimism. James offered to call a cab for her, but she shook her head with a smile. "I think I can manage," she said, and for the first time, she truly meant it. As they stepped out into the cool night air, James said quietly, "You know, most people never see the courage it takes to just be yourself. But I do, and I think anyone would be lucky to know you." Emily's eyes glistened with tears, not of sorrow, but of a profound gratitude she couldn't fully express. The earlier rejection by Lucas felt like a distant memory, a shadow that no longer held power over her. Tonight, she had witnessed something far more powerful: kindness, empathy, and the extraordinary courage of a man willing to see past appearances to the heart of another human being. It was in that moment, under the glow of street lamps and the gentle hum of the city at night, that Emily realized life had a strange, beautiful way of surprising you when you least expected it. A simple act of courage, a small gesture of humanity, could shift the course of your world entirely. And for James, watching Emily smile as she navigated her wheelchair with confidence, he knew that some encounters weren't just coincidences, they were moments of fate, reminders that even in a world full of judgment, extraordinary kindness could still thrive. If you believe in the power of kindness, in second chances, in the quiet courage of the human heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps stories like Emily and James reach people who need hope the most. Weeks passed, and Emily and James began to meet regularly, finding comfort in their shared vulnerability. They discovered small joys together, late-night walks under the city lights, quiet afternoons in the library, and laughter-filled visits to the local park where Lily would show Emily her superhero drawings. It was a slow, deliberate friendship that blossomed naturally into something more profound, a bond forged through trust, understanding, and unwavering respect. Emily no longer felt like a burden or an outsider. She was a partner, a confidant, and a friend who had found someone willing to see her entire being, not just her limitations. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the cafe-copyright windows, James reached across the table and took Emily's hand in both of his. "You've changed my life in ways I didn't know I needed," he said, his voice steady yet tender. Emily's eyes shimmered with tears, but she laughed softly, a sound of pure, unfiltered joy. "No," she whispered, "you've changed mine." In that quiet, ordinary moment, they both understood that life's true miracles often came not in grand gestures, but in the courage to see each other fully, to embrace vulnerability, and to choose connection over fear. Before we close, I have a small request. Comment below and share a time when someone's kindness changed your life. It might inspire someone else today. Emily's journey had been one of heartbreak, rejection, and quiet perseverance. But through the unthinkable kindness of a stranger who refused to see her limitations, she discovered a world of possibilities she had never dared to imagine. James, too, found hope in the most unexpected place, the resilience and grace of a woman who taught him that true strength is measured not by what we overcome alone, but by the compassion we share with others. And as the city lights flickered outside, two hearts that might have remained alone forever discovered the extraordinary power of seeing and being seen. If this story touched your heart, please engage with this video, like, comment, and share it to remind the world that genuine kindness still exists, and that even the smallest gestures can change a life forever.